Oh no! Come on. I don't know why the sound isn't working.
Tắt đi lên đi. Mình nói ai? Mình đi lên đi.
Sao?
Chị Thanh Thanh.
Đi lên. Anh Chí.
Gì?
Lên sửa.
Không. Is
Well, I'll put subtitles.
Anh Chí. Lên
Chị.
sửa.
tôi biết đâu.
Anh kia biết đi lên đi.
Chắc chị đã biết, chắc chị làm được.
Wow. Yeah, sure.
Mở cái loa, mở cái loa,
Đi lại bên ông.
nó tắt cái loa bả mà. Speaker kìa, speaker đó.
Ngoài nó tắt rồi anh.
Ừ.
0.3 hours.
Whoops. You're awesome. Thank you so much. All right. I'm
Easy.
gonna hopefully still have that. Yeah, I'll still leave the titles on. All right.
Right now.
Thank you so much.
I want to go home. It's very prickly. So I've been in the forest for about an hour and a half without my cell phone, and I've already gone completely feral. Ow! This is who I am now. I've retreated back to nature, and it's not going very well. That's a mud pit.
There used to be this social stigma against taking your phone out and taking a look at it. Like if I took my phone out right now and I started checking it as I'm talking to you, I'd be an asshole. But I think there's been a dramatic change.
I'm having a hard time figuring out though, like how bad it actually is.
In 2008, we were spending 2.7 hours a day online. If you fast forward to 2017, we're now spending double the amount of time online. And the time that we spend on mobile devices has gone from that tiny little sliver, 0.3 hours, to this enormous chunk, 3.3 hours.
Right now I'm working on an article about technology addiction. Anyone with a smartphone has joked at some point about being addicted to it. But I'm curious if there's potentially something more serious going on. My tech addiction, if I have one, is probably Twitter. I was in an airport the other day, and I was doing a pull to refresh on my Twitter feed, expecting something each time, and it was just, I would pull, and there'd be one thing, it wasn't good enough, and I'd pull again, another thing, not good enough, pull again. It's a reflex at this point, and it can make you feel really bad just by opening up the app. Two-thirds of the world's adult population now own a smartphone. And the unintended consequences of this technology are everywhere. 11 teens die every day from texting while driving. And excessive gaming has been linked to several deaths throughout the world.
Be writing this down.
What we have right now is former tech executives actually come out and talk about the products that they've built for the first time in not completely rosy terms.
I was the person that first invented the infinite scroll for the web. So just as you scroll down, just keep loading more, keep loading more, keep loading more. And what I didn't realize at the time is that when you take away those kind of stopping cues, so you don't give the brain the chance to catch up with our impulses, that would directly lead to hundreds of millions of hours being wasted.
Do you feel a sense of regret for that?
Absolutely. I think when I look at Silicon Valley, early on, I can say these were unintended consequences.
Consequences.
Now, though,
Effects.
we know the effects that our interfaces will have when you scale them up to 2 billion people. That will have a deep impact on people's behavior.
My name is Charlie Wardell. I'm a reporter with BuzzFeed News. But in speaking with psychologists who study this, a lot of them say the phenomenon is just too new to write anything conclusive.
Smartphones are a really easy target to blame. Anything that's consuming people's time and any type of new technology has engendered a kind of moral panic. This isn't a drug, right? This is something that provides opportunities, information. It's not all a negative story. I think the negative story gets the most attention.
There's just so many unknowns. So I'm skeptical of anyone who says this is not bad. And skeptical of people who say that this is the next, epidemic. I think there are two big questions here. And one is, what is the scope of this problem? Is this an addiction, or is this just a lack of self-control? Yeah, I was hoping one of your doctors could. The second is, if it is an addiction, we can't put this technology back in the box. It's here to stay. So what do we do to live better, healthier lives?
Question maybe? How do we live with technology?
We look at how people react physiologically to not being able to have access to their devices. So the first thing I'm going to do is place some electrodes on your fingers. And this is what's going to record your EDA, which is electrodermal activity, in your fingertips.
Okay.
And then also your heart rate.
Okay.
And both of those things test anxiety levels. We're going to record you for about 10 minutes, and we're going to measure your anxiety levels as you do your work.
Okay.
Okay?
Sure.
And if I could have your smartphone.
You're good. Can I have my phone?
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
So I'm going to
take
put
care of
this
it.
on the table behind you. Please don't turn around and look at it. Just try to stay as focused as possible
Okay.
on your work task.
Sure.
Okay?
All right.
All right.
I am ready to blog. Focus on sounds here.
Cannot research.
Yes, I keep losing my train of thought.
Okay, you may stop now.
I really want to look at my phone right now, which is weird because I know that I've just been manipulated into a certain behavior, and yet still my brain is telling me but there's still stuff there. I want to see it, even though I know it's not even real. It's just yeah, so if you could just show me a little bit what this is doing.
Just like with any addiction, when you are engaging in an activity that gives you pleasure, it releases a hormone in the brain called dopamine.
App developers use subtle methods like bright red dots, notifications sent at strategic times, and random bursts of likes to reward users for logging in. And each time they do, a rush of dopamine sends pleasure signals to the body. But when a heavy user is away from the device, a notification will instead trigger the release of hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, causing stress. Okay, so time for me to see the results.
Well, first of all, there was what we call a latent state, which is how people are without feeling any sort of anxiety.
Yeah.
This is when the text came in. You had an increase of 0.40. It's about 8 times higher than you were in your latent state.
8 times my sort of anxiety. I mean, that's pretty substantial.
Yeah. This was the first phone call.
Wow, the phone calls are just so much more dramatic than the text.
Right.
So is this stress response something that you're seeing with a lot of other people?
It is very typical of people who are heavy smartphone users.
There I am. I feel seen. What are the long-term effects that you see?
Well, we don't know the long-term effects of smartphone use yet, but the kind of stress that the smartphone produces can lead to real physical ailments like liver problems, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension.
As a result, do you use your phone less now?
Yes, absolutely. A year ago, I removed my email from my phone. I also removed Facebook. The other thing that I always recommend is to spend some time outdoors and away from your device. Experience nature and its beauty. Just absorb it and be in the moment instead of always having to document everything.
What's WA?
Stone, feather
What state?
and bone, roar of the ocean, guide us home. Wood, stone, feather and bone, roar of the ocean,
Junior. Oh, you
guide
did?
us
Oh,
home.
awesome.
Wolf and Ray.
I am here outside of Seattle, Washington, at the Restart Technology Addiction Rehabilitation and Detox Center. And I'm here to figure out just how bad this problem can get. What brought you here?
Social media. So it's just social media addiction mostly. For me, it was gaming took up like, I don't know, 70 to 80% of my waking life.
I think that for a lot of us, there's usually a problem game or a problem activity. But I think we could all agree it's sort of a mix of things too.
I mean, I was at college. I could have been out. I could have been, running at all the clubs. But, I'm literally starving myself and failing my classes. So I withdrew for 2 semesters. And after withdrawing that second time, I had a deep conversation with my parents, basically letting them know everything and telling them how bad things had gotten. And they wanted to help me out. So when they told me about Restart, I opened my arms. I wanted to get better.
In the first phase of the program, clients are forbidden from using all forms of digital technology. It's a 2-month detox. Phases 2 and 3 transition clients back into regular life by first housing them together for 6 months with limited access to technology, and then into complete self-sufficiency.
Describe to me the type of person usually who comes to Restart.
The most typical scenario is that they find themselves in college because they're bright. But once they got to college, they found themselves out of the protective, structured environment of home with greater academic demands and social demands. And so their addiction just, ratchets. For our guys, the negative consequences are physical, like severe sleep deprivation, very poor nutrition, lack of exercise, that has gone on sometimes for years, so they're in a very poor state of health. We have one guy in our program who's going to lose all of his teeth because he has not taken care of them for years.
It's mostly men who come here. Why do you think that there are so few women?
It's a big question, and I look forward to researchers who really are going to try to answer the questions. But when I look at teenage girls, they want to be together. Whereas the guys, they were willing to be socially isolated in front of a screen.
Take a couple of deep breaths, try to relax. So we'll start by shifting our attention to our hearing. Can you break apart the different sounds?
I'm totally graduated from the program. Just before I came to Restart, I was gaming on average probably 14 hours a day.
Wow. And so that obviously gets in the way of the rest of
Literally everything.
It feels like it's easier here to gain a grasp on the addiction and to manage it. But what is it like going back to living with technology?
So when I left Restart, I moved into an apartment with other people from Restart. A house we lived in was absolutely no technology at all. And it really made it a lot easier to dissuade me from falling back into old habits. And I tried to keep going with the idea of, always adding the smallest step forward I can take. And so, eventually I got a smartphone back, but I wanted monitoring software on it so that other people would know what I'm doing on my smartphone and they can call me out if I'm doing anything I shouldn't be.
How do you feel right now about Google, Facebook, Twitter, Apple, all these big tech companies? How do you look at what they're doing and through the lens of what you've been through?
Yeah, there is still that person down inside of me that loves the idea of all this technology coming out. But at the same time, when I see little kids entertaining themselves by watching YouTube all day or playing Minecraft and stuff like that, that just eats up all of their time, it's terrifying. I think we're going to have an epidemic of people that are faced with very similar problems to what I had, that haven't been able to recognize the problem because it's the new normal. I know where the path lies for me. The despair that I felt sitting on my couch researching ways to kill myself, it's just as serious as any other addiction, and it ends in a lot of the same places.
Hey Charlie, how did it go today?
Man, it was intense. It's like a straight up rehab facility. This thing costs like $30,000 to go to.
Yeah, so $30,000 program is the only answer to stop being so dependent on our devices. We're screwed.
One thing that I thought was interesting is the person who runs the facility was saying in South Korea, gaming companies actually put money towards rehabilitation centers for people who have gaming addiction. But, like the big tech companies don't do that at all.
We need to talk to some of these tech companies.
Take care.
Now I'd like to take a moment to talk about something that's on a lot of people's minds. We might not even recognize just how distracted we become.
In recent months, Apple, Google, and others have released some new tools like app timers and beefed up Do Not Disturb modes. They're aimed at helping people manage the time they spend on devices. But is this all just lip service?
Android P lets you set time limits on apps and will nudge you when you're close to your limit that it's time to do something else.
The mobile advertising industry in the United States is worth about $80 billion. And isn't the idea of spending less time on devices a direct threat to their bottom line? When I reach out for interview requests, I'm turned down by all the major tech companies, except for one. Thanks to a long reporting history that our desk has with Google, they agreed to talk to me. And I came to their Mountain View headquarters for a rare sit-down with an executive at Android.
Some people have said to me, it's really unnatural, like a tech company wanting to help people figure out how to not use tech as much. What's that all about? But when we actually went and asked people, how are you feeling about this? People said to us pretty clearly, I love my phone, but some of the time I spent on it, I wish I had. And actually over 70% of people we talked to felt that way. So I think that you just reach that point of momentum on some of these topics where it's time to act.
Another complication with that is obviously that, Google is a company. It turns out that it is, and there are these financial demands, obviously. So critics of Google and tech companies will argue that, as long as you have a financial incentive to keep people on the devices, that you're never going to go far enough. How do you respond to that critique?
It has to be about the long term, because if there's an app that's sending you tons of notifications every day or doing things that you don't like, there will be tools available from us, from others, to silence that. I think balance is a feature. One of the things I'm excited about is this feature we codenamed Shush. You flip your phone over on the table and it turns on Do Not Disturb mode for you. So I think it's one part awareness, I think it's one part tools, and I think it's one part both responsibility on the part of companies and individuals. We have many teams at the company that are modeling things in a very different way now, looking at how not only did you engage, but were you happy with that engagement?
I think Samir is one of the most thoughtful and straightforward tech executives that I've interviewed on the record. I think he was willing to engage in some of these points, up to a degree. But again, when I walk around today, it's utopian in this way. People are playing volleyball, all your meals are free. It does drive home that, they're living in this world built by our attention.
and is pretty nice for them. And it would be pretty hard to sort of reverse the model and, you know, and have that take a hit.
All right, so spin around a few times. Perfect. Good stuff. Spin around again.